The samurai, Japan's elite warrior class, have captured the imagination of people around the world with their code of honor, distinctive armor, and weaponry. Their stories, which span from the early medieval period to the end of the Edo period in the 19th century, are a rich tapestry of loyalty, bravery, tragedy, and intrigue. The history of the samurai is inextricably linked with the history of Japan. Not only were they brave warriors, but they were also politicians. They ruled feudal Japan for centuries and carried out some of the most magnificent battles in the world. Known for their discipline, honor, and loyalty, samurai are now part of the mystical story surrounding the feudal history of Japan. But who were they really? How did they become some of the world's most skilled fighters? Where did they go? To enter into the world of shoguns, swordplay, and honor, watch this video till the end. If you like, please give me a thumb up and don't forget to subscribe for more. During the Heian period, 794-1185 CE, Japan was not unified and faced battles from China and ethnic populations within the country. The army was based on the Chinese Tang dynasty model, which was fairly immobile. The Emishi people dwelled in the north of Japan. They were regarded as barbarians or the hairy ones. However, their fighting tactics were far superior to those of the rest of the country. They used archery and were able horsemen. These emishi were the foundation of the samurai warrior. Heian soldiers wanted to learn these tactics, and so absorbed the emishi people into their territory. From the 8th to the end of the 11th century, the Fujiwara clan dominated the political system by marrying its daughters to the Japanese emperors. The Fujiwara clan pushed other wealthy clans away from the emperor. Consequently, these clans left the imperial court to establish power elsewhere. These powerful elites were called daimyos, and they needed protection from the imperial forces. The daimyos wanted the best warriors in the land, and so hired those who had emishi and heian training. They were called samurai because it means those who serve. In the mid-12th century, it was not the emperor who held the most power, but the clans. In the Great Jinpai War 1180-1185, the Minamoto clan defeated the Taira, making them the dominant power in Japan. The leader of the Minamoto, Minamoto no Yoritomo, created a military dictatorship, the Kamakura shogunate. In essence, samurai now run the country. The shogunate was basically a military dictatorship. On paper, the shogun was meant to represent the interests of the emperor, but in reality, the emperor was just a figurehead. In some cases, the shogun was also just a figurehead for the daimyos. Samurai were at the head of the shogunate, and so now enjoyed great privileges in Japanese society. During the Kamakura shogunate, the samurai adopted Zen Buddhism because its behavioral code was similar to that of their own. It involved seeking one's own nature through meditation. It was also during the Kamakura shogunate that the katana, or the samurai sword, became a mark of honor. Soldiers embellished them with gems and beautiful carvings. The Kamakura shogunate was not very stable. When Japan had to deal with 2 Mughal invasions, it fell and was taken over by the Ashikaga shogunate 133-81573. They too fell because of so much fighting between clans. Japan had a feudal system, and so landowners had a lot of power. At the end of the 15th century, there was no central power. Samurai had the most control because they were the ones who were able to fight to gain power. The daimyos were constantly fighting each other to increase their power. The name of the period literally translates to period of the country at war. This is seen as the golden age of the samurai, as it is when most of their fighting took place. In 1615, Tokugawa Ieyasu did what no leader had done before, and united Japan. The union meant that there were fewer fights. Thus, the samurai had to adapt. Many slid from warfare to diplomacy. During this period of peace, samurai adopted more principles from Buddhism and the Chinese philosopher Confucius. The moral code Bushido arose. It encourages honor, kindness, loyalty, and military skill. Some say it is similar to the European code of chivalry. It was in the 16th century that Japan adopted the principles of Bushido across the country. It became a national identity and is still prevalent in contemporary Japan. In the 16th century, many samurai had adapted to the new peaceful norm and did not fight. Instead, they spread out into society with different roles, but their privilege remained. In 1588, samurai were making less than they were previously. It was also banned for anyone who was not a samurai to carry a katana. This social rule meant that samurai were still highly respected. The prestige they had kept them happy for a while, despite their worse financial position. After a few centuries, Japan was becoming more familiar with the West. In 1858, the Tokugawa leadership started making trade deals that brought them much unpopularity among the conservative Japanese, including the samurai. In 1861, the Meiji Restoration saw the emperor restored to power by the traditionalists. The samurai class played a large hand in the restoration, but ultimately it was not to their benefit. In 1871, feudalism was abolished, which left samurai without a role in society. At the same time, they were banned from having katanas unless they were part of the national army. The samurai were brought to their lowest when their stipend was transferred into government bonds. The money they received before was worth much more than what they received from the bonds. They did not go down without a fight. There were several samurai uprisings, but the imperial power stamped them down. It was ironic considering the samurai helped them get back into power in the first place. The samurai had no choice but to assimilate into society as politicians, clerks, lawyers, and so on, anything but warriors. The culture of the samurai left an indelible mark on Japanese culture in the shape of bushido. In 1912, bushido became the national moral code, and much of the national identity was built around it. During World War II, Japanese soldiers returned to the samurai principle of death before honor. They would carry out banzai attacks where a group of soldiers would charge at the enemy with no regard for their own safety. Famously, the Japanese had a squadron of pilots who would carry out suicide flights in order to blow up their targets. There was much honor in dying for your country. Even though the samurai were loyal, it is now thought that the stories have been exaggerated for the sake of nationalism. In reality, samurai would still betray each other and their shogun if needed. In this way, the banzai and kamikaze were a product of the Japanese state distorting the stories of the samurai for the sake of emboldening soldiers.